I should have known something was off when my mother texted the invitation instead of calling. Family dinner tonight. Your dad made reservations. No emojis. No follow-up messages. Just the address of a restaurant I had only ever seen from the outside. It was the kind of place with tall glass windows and soft yellow lighting that made everything inside look expensive, even from the sidewalk. I stood there for a moment before going in, smoothing the sleeves of the only blazer I owned that could pass for nice. When the host asked for the reservation name, I said my last name and immediately saw the recognition on his face. "Oh yes," he said. "Your party is already seated." Of course they were. My parents were halfway through a bottle of wine when I reached the table. My brother and sister were leaning toward each other, laughing about something that stopped the moment I arrived. My dad barely looked up. "There you are," he said. "Not good to see you. Not glad you made it." Just acknowledgement, like I'd finally shown up for something I was late to. I pulled out the empty chair at the end of the table. That was when my mother slid a small folded paper toward me. At first I thought it was another menu. But it was thinner, grazy, a takeout menu from a place down the street. "We figured," she said lightly, "you might want something simpler." My sister laughed into her napkin. Dad added, almost helpfully, "This restaurant's menu is particular." I looked around the table. They already had appetizers. Plates of things I couldn't even identify, small, arranged pieces of food with sauces painted across porcelain. My brother raised his glass. "You know how you are with food." I did know. To them, I had always been the difficult one. Not because I actually was, but because once, years ago, I'd said a steak was overcooked, and my dad had decided that meant I didn't appreciate good restaurants. That story had followed me for a decade. Apparently it had followed me here too. No one was angry. No one was cruel in an obvious way. They were relaxed, comfortable, laughing. The takeout menu stayed between us like a joke everyone already understood. I felt something familiar settle into my chest. Not anger. Something older, the quiet realization that this was how things were supposed to go. I picked up the paper. Read it. Put it down again. Then I noticed something at the edge of the table. A folded reservation confirmation. Printed. My dad must have brought it to show the host earlier. I reached over and picked it up. Dad frowned slightly. "What are you doing?" "Just checking something," I said. No one stopped me. Why would they? I stood and walked a few steps toward the front of the restaurant where a waiter was passing. "Excuse me," I said quietly. He stopped.
Yes.
I handed him the confirmation. "I think there's been a small misunderstanding about this reservation." He glanced at the paper, then at me. I spoke calmly, not quickly, not angrily, just clearly. He nodded once. Understood. That was the entire conversation. I returned to the table. They were still laughing about something my brother had said. No one asked what I had told the waiter. I sat down for another minute. Long enough to notice that none of them had even touched the takeout menu they'd given me. It was still exactly where they'd slid it. Like a prop. Finally, I stood again. "You leaving already?" my sister asked. "I think so." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "Suit yourself." No one tried to stop me. The host thanked me politely as I walked out into the cool evening air. The restaurant door closed behind me. I walked half a block before the muffled sound reached the sidewalk. A raised voice. Even through the glass I could hear it. My dad. 1-900! What did you order?" I stopped. Not close enough to see clearly, but close enough to imagine it. The waiter explaining. The manager stepping over. The printed reservation on the table. The small detail my father hadn't bothered to read when he booked the room. Private dining reservation, minimum service requirement. Automatically billed to the reserving party. The waiter must have explained it calmly. They always do in places like that. No drama, just policy. Inside, the laughter had probably stopped. Confusion first. Then anger. Then the slow realization that the restaurant wasn't negotiating. I stood there for another moment before turning the corner. For most of my life, moments like tonight would have ended differently. I would have stayed, smiled awkwardly, ordered something small just to avoid making things uncomfortable. Let the joke land where it always had, on me. But tonight I had simply left, no speech, no argument. Just one small correction before walking out the door. By the time I reached the subway entrance, the restaurant lights were already out of sight behind the buildings. The strange thing was that I didn't feel victorious. Just quiet. Like a long, low noise in the background of my life had finally stopped. I still didn't know what would happen at the next family gathering. Maybe nothing would change. Families have a way of continuing exactly as they always have. But for the first time, I had done something different, and sometimes that was enough.